So very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Chanaka Virasundara, the Sergeant at Arms today. So now it's about to start the meeting, so I call the House to order. So before begins, let me do the proceedings, the collaring of the presidents. Thank you very much.
I now call the meeting to order. Can I please ask everyone to rise for the national anthem, please? Can I now ask Rotarian Megara Vijayamana to deliver the Rotary Pledge?
As a Rotarian, it is my purpose to regard my business or profession as my opportunity to express myself in service to society as well as a mean to material gain, to maintain the dignity and worthiness of my calling by the acceptance and promotion of high standards and the elimination of questionable practice, to value success in my vocation as a worthy ambition when achieved as a result of service to society, but to accept no profit nor distinction which arises from unfair advantage, abuse of privilege, or betrayal of trust, to recognize that any sound transaction must be governed by practices which bring satisfaction to all parties concerned, and to esteem it a privilege in my profession or business to serve beyond the strict measure of duty or obligation.
Thank you, Rotarian Megara. While we stand, can I please ask our main speaker of the day, Dr. W.A. Wijewardena, to please take your seat at the head table with the presidents. Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the joint meeting of the Rotary Clubs of Port City, Reconnections, Pan Colombo, and Colombo Uptown. Hope you are having a pleasant evening. So today we have a very interesting joint meeting, everyone. We have a few items also in the agenda, as you can see on my left. We are inducting a new member today to our club, and also we are giving our Vocational Service Excellence Award to Dr. Hiranya Abesekara, which we will do shortly as well. But before we move on to the official proceedings, I'd like to kindly do a few announcements from all the presidents. So from my end, we have a motor rally coming up on the 8th of February. It's called the RCPC Motor Rally. This is the second year that we are doing this, and this time the cause is going to be for Little Hearts. The car rally will start from Port City and will proceed to Chetwin C in Negombo. Further details will follow on how registrations can be done, and your support will be greatly appreciated. On the other hand, we have two main projects happening. One is the Back to School project, where we are donating school books and stationery to 4 different schools across Sri Lanka. It's been the largest donation we've had from the club since the club started. Almost 700,000 rupees was donated with a contribution from our sister club, Bangalore, as well. And then this is one of our signature projects, which is the Periods with Pride, where we give sanitary napkins to underprivileged students in many parts of Sri Lanka. So these are some of the highlights from Port City's end. I'm going to hand it over to my fellow presidents for a quick take on their announcements. IPP Yolantika.
Thank you, President Michael. First and foremost, from Colombo Reconnections, I would like to extend a sincere thanks for having us in this joint meeting. We've had several meetings in the past which have been very fruitful, so thank you very much, and we hope to strengthen our bond in the next couple of months as well. In terms of announcements, we have a bone marrow transplant project which is run by the Lady Ridgeway Hospital. For this, our club has established a dedicated fund with the support of the Sri Lanka College of Hematologists. So we recently released the funds to help a child suffering from severe anemia who needed urgent transplants to save his life. So this child was from an underprivileged socioeconomic background, and we were very successful in helping this child get the rightful health requirements. So we also have several projects that are in the pipeline. However, we will notify them in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Myself, Gokumaresh Murthy from Rotary Club of Pan Colombo. Thanks, Michael, for inviting for this joint meeting. I think the second joint meeting for this year, presidential year. And the good part is like Michael took all the word, and thank you again for that. So we just came and sat here. Right, thanks, Michael. Okay, so about the projects, we did a couple of projects like last year to highlight one of the Indira Cancer Trust. So we volunteered, we went there for 2 hours and we spent the time with the kids and the mothers over there. Very heart-touching one, right? For the upcoming year, we have a school bag donation project, so which we are going to join with a couple of more clubs, planning by the end of the month of January, followed by a run which would happen in the month of March. Again, we'll be joining with multiple clubs. We are planning to have that in New Delhi, right? Thank you so much.
My name is Nirmal, President of the Rotary Club of Colombo Uptown. Firstly, I would like to thank President Michael for inviting us to join in this meeting. It's our first meeting for the year. Thank you, Michael. I think it's a very good start with a very eminent speaker today, and we're all eager to hear what he has to say and looking at the year ahead for all of us. In terms of projects, we have the most immediate project ahead of us is this Friday, where we're going to Pindavalla Central College. It's an annual project where all our members contribute and we select 30 deserving kids, which we spend close to 350,000 and get all their school essentials, school bags, and some clothing items, including stationery and gifts. So we started this as a one-off project, but our members said it has to be sustainable. So we decided to do it as an annual project. So I'm happy to say some of us are going all the way there and completing this project. So that's the update from Uptown. Thank you.
Thank you, President. I'd like to also recognize the presence of District Governor-elect Devlin Pereira and also Dr. Kumari from the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much for being here. Next, we have two very important items of the agenda before we move on to our speaker. First is the induction of a new member to our club, Mr. Komin De Silva Karunasekara. So to introduce him, I'd like to call Rotarian Radhini to talk about our incoming member, Komin.
And thanks, Michael. So to give a brief introduction as to who Komin is. Komin is a proud product of St. Thomas's College, and he's currently reading for his Bachelor of Commerce with a double major in Management and International Business at the E.D. Cowan University. And beyond academics, Komin has been an active individual involved in sports and extracurricular activities as well. So he is also a dedicated member of Toastmasters, serving as the Vice President of Membership and also the President of the Dehiwala Toastmasters Club. He was also an active member of Rotaract, where he has also held positions like Joint Sports Director and also Sergeant at Arms. And we welcome you on stage to get yourself inducted.
So Rotarian Komin will be our youngest member yet, and we convinced him to skip Rotaract and join Rotary directly. He's part of the Rotaract Club of ECU, which the parent club is Midtown, but I think he has selected the better club, which is Both City. Nevertheless, President of Midtown is not here yet, hence I said that. Next, ladies and gentlemen, we have our Vocational Service Excellence Award, which is to be given to Dr. Hiranya Abesekara. This person is a true friend of the Rotary Club of Colombo Port City and has been working on a very important project with us, which is called the Gift of Sight project, where we actually started this last year by giving cataract lenses for children. So he has been spearheading that project with us, and in fact just last week we donated rupees 1 million worth of cataract lenses for children. Actually, just a few months ago, before we met him, we didn't know that there was such a requirement for children. So he has been instrumental in getting that project off the ground. But nevertheless, he has been working in this field for a long time, and he has been doing a lot of great work. And to talk more about Dr. Hiranya, I'd like to invite Rotarian Dulika Jayamana, our club admin director, to introduce Dr. Hiranya.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to introduce the recipient of this year's Vocational Service Excellence Award, Dr. Hiranya Abesekara. Thank you for being with us here. A consultant pediatric ophthalmologist at the Lady Ridgeway Hospital for Children, Dr. Hiranya has truly transformed pediatric eye care in Sri Lanka through his dedication, innovation, and unwavering commitment to service. One of his most outstanding contributions is bringing the Retina Cam, the Red Cam, a vital diagnostic tool for, please help me doctor in pronouncing this, retinoblastoma, is that correct? Yes, retinoblastoma, to Sri Lanka. Overcoming significant logistical challenges, he also personally arranged the shipment of this machine from the UK, ensuring this cutting-edge equipment is now saving the vision and lives of countless children at LRH. Today, the hospital remains the only one in Sri Lanka equipped to provide this specialized service. Dr. Hiranya has also been an incredible ally to our club, as President Michael said, with the project Gift of Sight. He is actively involved in the cataract lenses donations projects for children, and it has been pivotal to this club. Thanks to his guidance and the partnership, we have successfully supported life-changing surgeries for young patients in need. Furthermore, his decision to return to Sri Lanka after completing advanced training abroad speaks volumes about his character and commitment to saving his homeland. Dr. Hiranya exemplifies the values of vocational excellence and ethical service, demonstrating how one individual's dedication can make a profound impact on an entire community. Thank you, Doctor. So tonight, as we recognize his extraordinary contributions, let us be inspired by Dr. Hiranya's journey and the profound impact he has made on pediatric eye care in Sri Lanka. It is now my privilege to invite the President of the Rotary Club, Port City, to present the Vocational Service Excellence Award to Dr. Hiranya Abesekara. President.
Thank you, Rotarian Dulika, and can I please also invite District Governor-elect Delvin Pereira to join me in awarding this to Dr. Hiranya.
Big round of applause, please.
Dr. Hiranya, if I could kindly request you to speak a few words.
Thank you very much. I haven't got a long speech, but I will try to speak a few things. Dr. W. Vijayawardena, Deputy Governor of Central Bank, distinguished dignitaries of Rotary Club and the sister societies. First, let me thank the Rotary Club, Board City, for recognizing and giving me this honor on behalf of the work that I have done over the years. So they have been helping me with the very essential lenses, because this cataract, we know when we all get old, we get cataract at some point. Our parents, our grandparents, they all get cataract at some age, so they undergo cataract surgery. That's a natural thing. But children, they do get cataracts. That's a rare thing. They do get. I still haven't seen a kid of a affluent family to get cataract just like that. I mean, most of the kids, I would say 90%, more than 90% of the kids who get cataract are from underprivileged community in our country. So, needless to say, they can't afford, the families can't afford these lenses and other sophisticated instrumentation for us to do the surgery. I can do the surgery, but that infrastructure, the necessary instrumentation should be available. So all of us know we are going through a patch of economic crisis, I would say. We are still not over that yet. So the government is supporting us, but not at full speed. So the kind, the generous donations of from the society itself really help me to keep going. So otherwise I can't perform. I have to keep them on waiting lists. I can keep we can keep a 80-year-old person on a waiting list maybe for a couple of years, but I can't keep a 2-year-old child with cataract even for a couple of weeks. This child will go blind, and no point doing surgery once the child goes blind. So I have to act before the child goes blind. So for us to enable to do the surgery on time, thank you very much for your support. Those lenses are of immense support, and I hope the community will extend the support in the future as well. Yeah, it was a difficult decision to become a pediatric eye surgeon. I was an eye surgeon, so, and then transformed into a pediatric eye surgeon. When I took the decision, my senior said it's not, the remuneration is not good, because you are going to give up adult cataract practice, where your private practice is going to be based on. But I said that's okay, I will look after the kids. So I'm not seeing any adults, sorry, please don't bring me any adults. But still I have a decent practice, both in the government hospital and in the private hospital. Yeah, so basically the type of work I do and the manner I conduct that has attracted a lot of patients over the years. I think I took the right decision to convert into a pediatric eye surgeon. Then again, after getting advanced training, as Michael said, in UK, so a lot of people would not return. They would not remain in UK. They would go to Australia, New Zealand, somewhere with better greenery. But I decided I would come back to Sri Lanka, and I wasn't sure whether I would get to work in a bigger hospital. I was transferred to Jaffna, but I worked in Jaffna as well with all my heart. I travelled every week, leaving my family in Colombo. And yeah, so that era ended, and I got permanent transfer to Colombo in 2019. Yeah, so all those were difficult decisions, but I think I took the right decision, and particularly appreciation of my services in this magnitude just tells me that I have taken the right decision. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for honoring me. Thank you very much, Port City Rotary Club, for helping us and of the sister societies as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and I think Sri Lanka needs a lot more Dr. Hiranyas, and I hope we can attract them back once the country settles down. Thank you once again for your great work, Doctor, and we hope to continue to work with you in the Gift of Sight program in the years to come. Next, I think it's probably one of the most important segments in today's joint meeting. I think Sri Lanka is going through I believe it's going through a period of stability, and the government seems to be taking the right steps or not. We'll soon hear about that from Dr. Wijewardena. I think all of us are concerned. I think, when I saw Christmas this time in December, so many people were out, all the hotels were full, and I think people were actually celebrating after a long time, after many years of hardships, one after the other. I think we finally got a break, but will this break last, or what is in store for the future is something that remains to be seen, and probably we can get to know more about it today. But before I hand over the proceedings to Dr. Wijewardena, can I please invite the chairman of the College of Past Presidents, Rotarian Dion Schumann of Rotary Club of Colombo Uptown, to talk about the profile of Dr. Wijewardena.
Presidents at the head table, fellow Rotarians, ladies and gentlemen. We have a special tradition at Uptown when every now and then we parade some of our senior members just to ensure that they are still kicking and the heart is still there. So here I am, standing before you today. Normally on a meeting day, one is always very wary of taking any calls from the serving president, because it invariably ends up with you having to stand up in front of you and talk. But today, I'm delighted to do so. I feel it a special privilege for us to have such an eminent speaker with us. A speaker who is not just that, he is a writer, economic analysis, educationist, and a much sought after guide for many people in this country. Dr. Wijewardena is at present President of the Business Management School, or BMS as we know it, a government-approved non-sector sector university in Sri Lanka. And he has held this position since 2010, which is just a year after he retired, I believe, from Central Bank. Before joining BMS, his full-time occupation was at the Central Bank of Sri Lanka, which institution he has served for nearly 40 years. He retired from the bank in 2009 as its deputy governor. And I'm delighted to note that he and I were fellow travelers for a brief period during that time when I served at Reuters and we were in and out of the Central Bank. While in the bank, our guest speaker, he has been involved in almost all areas of Central Bank, including economic research, monetary policy, financial system stability, provident fund, currency issue, public debt, and rural credit. He initiated the setting up of Sri Lanka's accounting and auditing standards as the chairman of Sri Lanka Auditing and Accounting Standards Monitoring Board from 2000 to 2008. As chairman of the Institute of Bankers of Sri Lanka during the years 2000 to 9-year period, he led the team that successfully negotiated with the Chartered Institute of Bankers UK for the accreditation of its qualification. He also led the team that established the Credit Information Bureau of Sri Lanka as its founding general manager in 1990. And he also steered the central bank modernization project, which introduced modern technology to the bank while creating a lean and efficient organization. Dear friends, our speaker, Dr. Vijayawardena, holds a first-class honors degree in public administration and a postgraduate diploma in applied social statistics from the University of Sri Jayamanthapura. A Master of Science, MSc in Economics from the University of York, Director of Business Administration from California Metropolitan University, and a further DBA in Banking and Administration from the European International University, Paris. He is a fellow of the Institute of Bankers of Sri Lanka as well. He serves on the faculty of study boards of both the Sabaragama University and the Postgraduate University Institute of Management. His weekly column on economic and related issues, tagline, My View, Economics Matter, appears every Monday in the Daily FT. And I know it's the first almost go-to page on the Monday morning reading. Now you quickly look to see what he has to say about any of the current issues that's going on. And one of the things that always strikes me is that the language is very, very simple and easy to understand. And that's, I think, a great hallmark of a great teacher as well. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming our distinguished speaker, Dr. Vijayawardena.
Thank you very much, Chairman Rotarian Dion, whom I knew from his Reuters days, long time ago. President Michael, all Rotarians who are present here, very good evening to all of you. I am in fact delighted to be invited this evening to share my thoughts on the future of Sri Lanka's economy, which I have called Sri Lanka's economy tomorrow, with all the Rotarians who are present here. Many of you might think that economists are very important people in society, but that's not the case. And economy is too precious to be left only to economists. There are certain stories about economists. One story is that had happened during the heydays of the Soviet Union, when the General Secretary Leonid Brezhnev of the Communist Party of Soviet Union, he was receiving the Guard of Honor from the Red Army in Kremlin on the anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution, the October Revolution. Along with the military paraphernalia, there had been some civilian people dressed in civilian clothes parading in the military parade. Comrade Brezhnev had just turned to his KGB head and asked him, who are those people? Then the KGB head had said, those are economists. Then he got angry and he said, what the hell are these economists doing in my military parade? So it is said that comrade head of the KGB had very coolly told the General Secretary, we are going to release them in the United States. they will destroy that economy much faster than any of the military equipment that we are having in the Soviet Union. So therefore, economists are not, well respected, and you should not, think that they know everything. There's another story, and in the 20th century, there had been this most influential British economist called John Maynard Keynes, about whom many of you might have heard. After he has died, he had to go to heaven. At the gate of the heaven, he had been confronted by St. Peter and asked him what we are doing on earth. Keynes had said, very proudly, I was an economist. Then St. Peter has said, I am going to give you 3 questions. If you can answer them correctly, you will go to heaven. Otherwise, you have to go back to earth. The first question is, what will be the exchange rate tomorrow? What will be the interest rate tomorrow? What will be the inflation rate tomorrow? The answers given by this most famous economist, all the 3 answers had been wrong. Therefore, he was sent back to the earth. And there's a story saying that he was made the governor of the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. So this is the credibility of economy. So therefore, don't try to believe in them. You don't have to believe in me also. What we find is that in every human being there's an economist. Because we all are homo economicus. In the blood that runs through our body, in our veins, there's an economic message there. Because economics, if somebody asks me what you have learned in economics, is my answer always will be that I have learned how to get the best by spending the least, which we call in economics, we call the maximization. And you all are doing it. And if all the housewives who are present here, when they go to kitchen to cook a curry, they know exactly in what proportion they will put all the ingredients to the curry. I mean, you don't put all the salt in the world into a curry. You just put the exact one. So that's called economics. So therefore, the best economists are the housewives who are present here. In my long career in the central bank, where do you think that I met the best economist in Sri Lanka? Central Bank or Ministry of Finance or universities? No. I met them in the PETA wholesale market. The traders in the wholesale market knew exactly what would be the price of carrot in 6 months' time. What would be the price of potatoes in 6 months' time, because they are the people who are funding, who are financing the farmers in Valimada, farmers in Morelia. And if there had been a lot of financing that had been done by them, they know that the output would be more. They know the prices will come down. During my career in the central bank, I had been regularly consulting those people to get wisdom, because I didn't have that particular wisdom in me. So therefore you can always be proud of yourself. You are economist. Dr. Hiranya Abeseko, who is present here, is an economist, because he doesn't want to use all the lenses to do a cataract transplant of a child. No? You just use only one. So that, because that's called economic maximization. So I'm just going to take you through some of the salient things that we are facing today in Sri Lanka's economy. And we know that President Natrakumar Dissanayake is supported by a political alliance called the National People's Power. They got a landslide victory in both the presidential election and the parliamentary election. Now he is our president and he has formed a government. And the new government has a lot of challenges to face, because Sri Lanka had been going through an unprecedented economic crisis from 2021 onwards till President Anandakumar Dissanayake became the president. And when he became the president, by the time he became the president, we were not out of the woods. We are still in the crisis. So therefore, his main challenge today is to get out of the main features of the crisis on one side and ensure that Sri Lanka's economy will grow at a sufficiently high rate so that we will be able to deliver prosperity to the people of the country. In that respect, the most immediate challenge he faced was that there was an extended fund facility given to Sri Lanka by the International Monetary Fund, under which we had been given some $3 billion over a period of 4 years. And at the same time, Sri Lanka had suspended the debt repayment to two types of foreign creditors. One is called the bilateral creditors, where we had borrowed from individual countries. The other one is called the commercial creditors, from whom we had borrowed by issuing what is now famously known as the International Sovereign Bonds, or ISBs. And there was an ongoing debt restructuring program. So President Anura's main challenge was whether he should go along with the IMF program, and also whether he would do whatever that is necessary to be done to complete the debt restructuring program. It was also an ongoing program. Here the big problem is one of his rivals, the former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. He had told the electorate that if he is not elected by the electorate, and also if the electorate elects Anura as the president, the economy will descend to the calamitous level that we had been experiencing in the year 2022. So that was the biggest challenge for him. Fortunately, this president seems to be a pragmatic man. So on the very first day he assumed his office, he made the announcement that he will go along with the IMF program, number one. He will complete the debt restructuring program which had been ongoing. So therefore, the economy didn't descend to the calamitous state. So we are still, having our fuel, we are still having all the goods that we are having this meeting here. So there has not been any chaotic situation in Sri Lanka because of this reason. But the cartoonists have seen it in a different way. Now, he has been branded as a person who is being tutored by Ranil Wickremesinghe. You can see the cartoonist has very beautifully said so, because the Ranil Wickremesinghe is having a spear and he's escorting Anandakumar Dissanayake, the double-breasted, pocketed shirt, the short fellow. And this actually comes from this well parliament, the bridge, the choir bridge that Ranil Wickremesinghe had been telling. So he said that he was taking Sri Lanka through the well parliament, across from this side to the other side, and he had actually invited, when Anura was elected, he said that he is giving the baby to the hands of Anura so that he can carry this baby across the well parliament to the other side. Now this cartoonist has seen it very beautifully, and therefore now there is a belief in Sri Lanka that he is a fellow who is being tutored and guided by former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, but that's not the case. And we see some things that he had been doing, he is completely different from Ranil Wickremesinghe. So he has actually gained several gains, there has been several gains. That one is this, now we are in the good books of IMF. Usually that doesn't happen. Whenever there's a change in the regime in any country, IMF doesn't, immediately endorse the new regime. But here, within 1 week, the most important man from IMF, its head in the Asia Pacific region, he came to Sri Lanka. They had a meeting and they issued a statement saying that they are going to give full support to the new government. As a result, he had been able to get the confidence of the individual countries that had led to Sri Lanka, like India, China, Japan, France, UK and so forth. And Japan, India and France had been formed into a new official committee which would do the negotiations for debt restructuring for Sri Lanka. So they started continuing with that. So therefore he got the confidence of all these countries. And the exchange rate did collapse as predicted by President Ranil Wickremesinghe, where Ranil Wickremesinghe had said that exchange rate might fall to what, say, 500 rupees per US dollar, but it didn't fall. Instead, what happened was we have a very stable exchange rate right now. In the case of the price stability, the inflation, we find that the inflation rate has been coming down. The overall level of prices have been same. So therefore there had not been a kind of a high inflation in Sri Lanka. Then the negotiations were done with the bilateral creditors and also the ISD holders, and that was also completed by the end of this year, last year, and therefore that debt restructuring program had been completed. Now Sri Lanka can leverage its future economic prosperity on the gains that President Annakumar Dissanayake had got during the first 3 months of his rule in the country. But there are certain downside risks, because what has actually happened is that we have been able to have a stable level in the exchange rate, in the price level, and also we have been able to generate a positive economic growth in the last quarter of 2024. So as a result, the economy seems to be free from any of the problems that it had been facing in the past. But what is necessary is not this stability. What is necessary is to reduce the poverty level in Sri Lanka, because the poverty level had gone up tremendously. Have a higher economic growth so that we would be able to provide better and good employment to all the people who are joining the labor force, and to have a sustainable economic development so that maybe within 1 generation's time, maybe in 25 years' time, you will be able to proudly announce that we are a development, we are a rich country. So that's our game. So those are most of the things. But before coming into that, I would like to explain to you some of the key points, the difference between nominal and real, because this is something that we have to understand very clearly. Nominal is those things that are measured in terms of money. When we say price of a kiri samba is say 240 rupees, we are actually measuring the value of kiri samba by using Sri Lanka rupees, 240 rupees. But money, everybody knows, has no any value. It's some imagination that we have in our head. We think that they are valuable, but they are not actually valuable. I mean, even if you are given all the monies in the world to your hand, They are not of any use to you unless you cannot buy a loaf of bread to eat, because you can't eat money. So these are called nominal things, because the price level, exchange rate, the inflation rate that we measure, those are nominal things which are actually imaginations in our head. And those cannot, provide us our breakfast or lunch or dinner. They cannot provide the lenses for our cataract patients, no, Dr. Hiran? So that is the thing. So those are all nominal. But what matters is the real. Real thing is the one that we have to improve our welfare, improve our pleasure. Like things like, say, coconut and rice and mangoes and whatever that we can consume, or whatever that we can use as an input for further production, those are the real. So what matters to us is not the growth in this nominal thing, but the central bank is always concerned about the nominal thing, because central bank says when the inflation rate has now fallen to a negative level, it's a nominal, it's an imagination. And it doesn't help any one of us who are present. The housewives who are present here, they are interested in coconut. They are interested in kirisam. So those are the things that would provide the actual pleasure, actual prosperity to all of us. So that's called the real. So therefore, what has been attained through the IMF program is that we have been able to stabilize these nominal things in the economy. We have been able to stabilize the price level. We have been able to stabilize the exchange rate. We have been able to stabilize the government budget. And those are all nominal. They are necessary, but they alone cannot take us to the next stage of our economic prosperity. That is why we must have a plan to develop the real economy. We have to have a plan to have more kirisamba, more coconuts, more milk, more clothes, all things that we consider as things that would help us to improve our pleasure and improve our prosperity. The second distinction I would like to make is the inflation and the cost of living. Inflation is the rate at which the prices are rising, the general prices are rising. And inflation is useful to only the central bank, not to us. Not to anyone of you who are present here, the inflation doesn't matter, because when the central bank says inflation is negative, I think you may start laughing, no? Because for central bank, inflation is the useful item, but for us, what matters is the cost of living. Cost of living is the amount from our budget that we spend on food and the non-food item. And that is called the level, price level. For example, in Sri Lanka, we have a major price index compiled by the Department of Census Statistics called the Colombo Consumer Price Index, which is the official price index in Sri Lanka. There we calculate the level of price level, and at the same time any change in the level we call it the inflation rate. At that particular rate, when we compare with say 12 months ago, at the end of December 2024, had declined by about 1.7%, and the central bank says as a big achievement, big attempt. It's an attainment of the central bank. But of course, if you look at the overall price level, it has remained same. The overall price level about say 1 year ago, it was 191 according to this index. Even in December 2024, it was 109. So therefore, the cost of living for us has remained unchanged. Then the poverty and unemployment level, because the poverty is measured in Sri Lanka by using the official poverty line which had been designed by the Department of Census and Statistics. From time to time they conduct surveys throughout the country, which we call the household income and expenditure survey, because it's a sample survey. It doesn't cover, I don't know anyone who is present here had been approached by the census department to get the information. It's a sample survey. From that sample survey, they calculate the amount of money that is needed for a person to maintain his minimum living. And that living has been calculated as for a 4-member family in Sri Lanka for 1 month as 65,000 rupees. So if your family doesn't get this 65,000 rupees, if you have 4 members, you are below the poverty line. If you have more than that, you are above the poverty line. But everyone of us know that 65,000 is not sufficient for us to even to buy food for 4 members for 1 month. So therefore this particular poverty line has been criticized by many, saying that it doesn't actually represent the actual poverty level. The distress which people are facing in Sri Lanka has not been represented by it. For that purpose, we have to actually use some other index. The World Bank uses an index called $2.40 US cents per day income. And when we go by that particular poverty line, Sri Lanka has about 40% of our total population is below the poverty. And many of you, I think, may be below poverty if you use the World Bank index. Then the employment is also another critical area, because Sri Lanka is following the International Labour Organization, ILO definition of employment. This ILO definition of employment is also very critical, but that is being used by all the countries in the world. Therefore, Sri Lanka's data can be compared with the data from India, because we are using the same level. But that particular one says, if a person is employed for at least 1 hour, remember, at least for 1 hour during the preceding 2 weeks period, then you are considered as employed. But each one of us knows that by just working for 1 hour, we cannot maintain ourselves for even for 1 day, let alone for 2 weeks. But because we are following the global standard, and therefore, so when the Census and Statistics Department says the employment level has gone up and unemployment level has come down to 4%, that number does not represent the welfare level of people. It just represents the global standard. That's all. So I just want to make these 3 distinctions to you, because whenever the central bank governor says the inflation rate is now negative, you must now know to interpret. It is good for him, but not good for the housewives who are present here, because housewives are concerned about the total budget that they have to spend for food and non-food items, and whether that has gone down or not is the matter. So the now problem with Anandakumar Dissanayake is that Anandakumar Dissanayake, during the election campaign, he had a policy package which was against what is known as the neoliberal economic policies. And you may have heard the leftist politicians were criticizing Ranil Wickremesinghe is a neoliberal. He's a neoliberal economist. And but when they come to power, they don't follow the neoliberal economic policies, and they have a different, because the election manifesto which Anandakumar Dissanayake presented to electorate, it doesn't contain any of the neoliberal economic policies. But what happened was, when he had accepted this IMF extended fund facility, where IMF is following the neoliberal economic policy ideology, he was converted to a neoliberal overnight. Therefore, there is no difference between Ranil Wickremesinghe and Anandakumar Dissanayake today as far as the economic ideology is concerned. I have given in this table the comparison of the neoliberal concepts and the comparable benchmarks to the IMF External Fund Facility, you can see what you find on the left-hand side is the neoliberal policy, right hand is the benchmark to the IMF. You find they are one and the same. So when somebody accepts IMF policy package, he has actually, knowingly or unknowingly, he has accepted the neoliberal economic policy package. So the domestic economic challenges, IMF program requires the people to go for an economic adjustment program that involves belt tightening or austerity, because we have to tighten our belt. The government has to tighten because the government expenditure is to be tightened. Government has to reduce its budget deficit, which means that the government has to tighten its belt. When the government tightens its belt, all of us will have to tighten our belt, which we call an austerity program. Then the critics say that the burden of austerity has not been distributed justly, because the poor people have to suffer more in terms of the belt tightening than the rich people. Suppose there's a billionaire in Sri Lanka, and if we take 100 rupees from him, the cost to him is, negligible. But if you have a poor woman who gets only 100 rupees per day, if you take that 100 rupees from her, we are actually depriving the entire livelihood to that woman. So therefore, when the sharing of the burden in terms of the IMF program is not evenly distributed among all the people, what happens is the bigger burden is borne by the poor people than the rich people. So that is why at the election, Anil Kumar Dissanayake was able to get a landslide victory. The people were actually angry about the IMF program. So what happens is that we will have to now readjust our tax policy, but we don't have the space to readjust. Now if you look at the burden that we are having as Rotarians or housewives or people who work somewhere, I can put it, I can lead you through three types of burden. One is the inflation. When the inflation is there in the economy, what happens is the government is printing money, and that money is given to the hands of the people. But the government's cost of printing a 5,000 rupee note is about say 20 rupees. So for every 5,000 rupee note being printed by the government, it gets a huge profit. 4,980. I think that's the biggest and the most lucrative business that you can undertake, being the central bank of the country. Biggest profit. Suppose the government gets a 5,000 rupee note, gives it to a teacher. Teacher will have to sacrifice say 5 hours a day to get the 5,000 rupee note. So teacher makes a real sacrifice, because teacher has to now give up 5 hours of a day work, her life, to the government. But the government spends only 20 rupees, teacher has to sacrifice 5 hours. It's an unequal exchange. But why did the teacher agree to that? That is because the government had promised the teacher that if she goes to market with this 5,000 rupee note, she can buy 1 kilogram of kiri samba. So in other words, the exchange had been the teacher had exchanged 5 hours of labor service today, and the government has given her 1 kilogram of kiri samba. But if the government has given this 5,000 rupee notes to all the people in the country, all the people in the country will go at the same time to the market to buy kiri samba, prices will go up. Suppose the prices have gone up from 5,000 rupees to 10,000 rupees per kilogram now. When the teacher goes to the market, she can buy for the 5,000 rupee note given to her by the government only half a kilogram. The balance half which she has lost is a tax she has paid to the government. Since it has occurred due to inflation, we call it the inflation tax. So this inflation tax is a very prominent thing. I mean, all of us are paying, irrespective of our level of income, irrespective of our social status, we have to pay. But the rich people are smarter than the poor people, and they know how to avoid the inflation tax by getting their income increased. For example, doctors can increase the charges for the patients. I am not referring to Dr. Irania, I am referring to other doctors. So they get a higher income. I mean, you have already noted that when you go to a consult a doctor, the fees have got already. Now for those people, the inflation tax is completely avoided. But the poor people, they cannot do that, and therefore they have to pay. So the Colombo Consumer Price Index, I am just taking you through now. These numbers are very maybe important to you. Colombo Consumer Price Index, we had been calculating from year 1952. From time to time, the Census Department changes the method of calculation. They did a similar change in January 2021, which is called rebasing the index, so that they had added more goods that people had been consuming, taken out some of the goods which they had consumed earlier. So it had been an updating of the consumption pattern of the people. According to the Census Department, in January 2021, to buy the basket of goods in the Colombo Consumer Price Index for a 4-member family, for 1 month, they have to spend 91,880 rupees. That's the price of the basket at that time. In December 2024, when the inflation rate is negative, the same 4-member family has to spend now 175,490 rupees to buy the same basket. And the difference is simply the inflation tax that we have paid. Because unless our income has gone up by say about 91%, we have paid an inflation tax of 91% to government, which is a huge, none of you would have been aware of this, no? That you have been paying the tax, separate tax to government. Then burden on account of taxes. Now taxes is that the severely burdensome because the present income tax, we are paying 2 types of taxes as you are aware. One is called the direct income tax that we pay out of our income. Second one is that on the goods that we buy, we pay an indirect tax. For example, when the car market is opened in February this year, all the car buyers will be paying a huge indirect tax. So likewise, we pay direct taxes, we pay indirect taxes. In the case of the direct taxes, the present tax system is that out of the total income that we earn, 1.2 million rupees per annum is allowed to be deducted, because that is the amount which the government thinks that we need to maintain ourselves for health, for cataract surgeries, to transport, to have a party like this. We can manage it with 100,000 rupees per month. The government thinks so. So, above that amount, we have to pay taxes. And that tax, if you take a person who is getting 200,000 rupees as his income per month, already the inflation has reduced his real income to about say 102,000 rupees. On top of that, now he has to pay 6,000 rupees as his income tax contribution per month. So his income is now reduced to something like it's less amount. So it's something like tax of 6,000 rupees, so it comes over 102,000 rupees, his real income comes down to that. In addition to that, he should pay indirect taxes. That all depends on the government's total expenditure. That amount I have calculated for 2024. It falls on each person, it falls about 10,378 rupees, so that the income remaining for him after paying the inflation tax, after paying the direct tax, and after paying the indirect tax is about, say, 96,640 rupees per. That is where we all live for present. Then we have another important. Now, there had been a famous economist called David Ricardo. He's an English economist. In long time ago, about 200 years ago, in 1815, he said, if you want to calculate the burden of government expenditure, don't just take into account the taxes that we have paid. I have taken into account only the inflation tax, direct and indirect taxes. What he said was that if the government has borrowed money to finance its expenditure, that money we have to repay tomorrow as taxpayers. So therefore he said, any borrowing by the government today is a tax liability that we have assumed for tomorrow. So the total burden that falls on us therefore consists of three parts. The inflation tax, the direct and indirect taxes, plus if the government has borrowed money to finance itself, we have to pay taxes tomorrow. So there's a tax liability that we are carrying with us. And if we the government borrowing program for 22 I calculated, that comes to about 27,000 rupees for each one of us. So you have to deduct another 27,000 from 96,000 to find out where you stand. Now these are very important matters, as laymen, how we should interpret the statements made by politicians, economists, central bankers, and so forth. Now this is the challenge which Annakumara Dissanayake is really facing, because the people are actually suffering. You can't ignore it. If you continue to ignore it, there will be another Aragale like the Aragale that we had in 2022, and you can't avoid it. Because people are silently suffering. They are suffering from the inflation tax, they are suffering from the direct and indirect taxes, they are suffering from the heavy borrowing by the government. So therefore it can always erupt, like a volcano which is, in a dormant state, it can always erupt and, make another Aragale. So this is one of the biggest challenges. But Annakumara Dissanayake has another challenge. That challenge is this. Ranil Wickremesinghe is a very smart fellow. Just before the presidential election, he got Parliament to enact a new act called Economic Transformation Act. That act had nothing to do with economic transformation. Though it was called Economic Transformation Act, nothing to do with it. What it did was, all the benchmarks that we had agreed with IMF had been codified into law. Now it's a law now. Annakumara Dissanayake has no choice. He has to either repeal this act or he has to go by this act. So his hands and legs are now bound by Ranil Wickremesinghe. He cannot do anything. Because he has to comply with all the benchmark. The budget deficit, the amount of taxes that he has to raise for the people, it should be 15% of the total income of the country. He has no choice. If he actually repudiates this thing, then IMF will go away and then we are going back to the 2022 level. See, imagine the type of risk that we are facing here. Either we have to go by Ranil Wickremesinghe type economic transformation, or if we abandon it, the IMF will go out, then we cannot have this meeting at this particular building here. because we are in an economic crisis. So he has this particular problem. Going by the benchmarks of IMF that have been codified into law by the previous government, it is not a good thing. I mean, to bind a future government by a present parliament is not a good governance principle. It's not a good governance principle. But who cares? Those MPs, all the MPs who raised their hands in parliament to enact this one, they never cared for this, particular fact, whether it is in good governance or not. So today, new government cannot simply repeal this act. If they repeal it, it amounts to giving up the IMF program, then it amounts to losing confidence from countries like India, China, Japan and the Western world. Then we don't get the foreign exchange flows, and we are moving back to the economic crisis that we had in year 2020. So the new government is bound to maintain the growth rate of 5% during 2025-27 because that's what has been codified into the law. Very difficult task. And the best estimate for IMF is about 3%. This is where I have given here the projections. Projections by the Economic Transformation Act and the projections by IMF. We have to, I think, work faster, work harder to reach the level of economic prosperity which the new Economic Transformation Act has compelled on the new government. For example, year 2029, if you go by the existing resource base, our total GDP will be about $100 billion. But the Economic Transformation Act requires us to have a level of $117 billion. I sympathize on Anukumar Disana because he cannot sleep down. But he has to somehow increase the growth rate to reach this level. Otherwise, he is not, following the parliamentary direction that had been given him through the Economic Transformation Act. So the debt restructuring, government is still to sign the agreement with ISB holders. Of course, it was complete. They have to sign it, and I was told that before the end of this month, they will be signed and it will be complete. Then we have to start paying interest, plus we have to start repaying the debt related to the bilateral debt. In 2025 alone, so far, of course, the central bank has not given any of these data to us. They are supposed to give this data every week, every Friday, but they have not updated the data. So I have done it by using the available information, and according to me, the debt repayment outflow during 2025 is about $2 billion. You have to repay interest. There are so many payments that you have to make to those, ISB holders and the foreign creditors, because so far we have been able to have a good life because we had suspended the debt repayment. But we had promised those people we will add them to the principal amount and we start repaying once the debt is restructured. Now it is restructured. So 2025 alone we have to pay about $2 billion. And what matters to us is, whether this is adequate to pay out of our available foreign exchange reserves. The foreign exchange reserves are maintained by the central bank. And those reserves are hard currencies like, US dollars, euro, then Japanese yen, Australian dollar, those are hard currencies and not the Chinese yuan. Chinese yuan is not a hard currency. So therefore, any holding by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka in those hard currencies, plus any investment in foreign exchange by Central Bank in the securities issued in those currencies, then the gold stock that we are having very small, some 500 kilograms of the gold we have for a nation. So when we take everything together, the central bank says the foreign reserves had amounted to $6 billion by the end of 2024. Again, central bank has actually misled us. Because this 20 to 6 billion includes a swap facility where we had got some currency exchange with the People's Bank of China, the Central Bank of China, amounted to $1.4 billion which we cannot use. Number one, it is in yuan. The yuan is not a convertible currency. If you want to use it, we have to convert it into dollars. Second one is there's a condition. Condition is the People's Bank of China will allow Sri Lanka to use it when Sri Lanka's foreign reserves are high enough to meet a minimum of 3 months imports in the future. Now we have not so far come to that level, therefore we cannot use even yuan balance there. So what it means is it's an unusable thing, but central bank has added this to its foreign reserves. Fortunately, the IMF and the financial advisors to debt restructuring, the Clifford Chance, they have taken it out. They have not added it because they know that's not useful. And even when Governor Nandalal Wilson was questioned by Harsha Da Silva at the recent Committee on Public Finance, Governor Nandalal Wilson admitted that we cannot use it. What the central bank has done is, when they report this number in very small print, they have said this includes this $1.4 billion coming from a soft facility for People's Bank of China. Just like these commercial bankers, when you go and sign a loan agreement with a commercial bank, all the favorable conditions are in very big print. Unfavorable are very small print. The borrower cannot even read them unless he has a magnifying glass. Same thing is being done by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. You have to have a magnifying glass to read through the qualification for the foreign reserve. So when you deduct this 1.4 billion from 6 billion, it comes to 4.6 billion. And when you take out this 2 billion that we have to earmark for repayment of the debt after debt restructuring, the total usable foreign reserves of the country will come down to about, say, 2.6. So out of that, we have to take some money to import motor cars. You can see the type of problem that we are facing. Unless we get the credit line, that is why when President Anand Kumar Dissanayake, we had to very hard negotiate with Chinese president to get a very large credit line from China, from India. We will not be able to manage our finances in 2024 and beyond. So that's the must for him. I hope he will do that. Now, this is the IMF calculation. Now, what they have done is that they have taken into account all the normal inflows to Sri Lanka, foreign inflows, all the non-outflows. Then they have calculated the financing gap. The first line there. During 2022-27, the financing gap for Sri Lanka is $25 billion. How is to be financed? Part of that will be financed by the money that we borrow from IMF, from ADB, from World Bank, and from India, all the countries which are willing to lend us. Even after that, there's a gap. And the IMF has predicted out of this gap, 6 billion will be the debt reduction by the creditors. Another 10 billion, so altogether about 17 billion will have to come to Sri Lanka by way of a debt reduction, which we call the haircut. Normally we call it haircut. But in the present debt restructuring plan, we didn't get that haircut. So what it means is we have to work harder, export more, get more foreign tourists, send more Sri Lankan abroad, and get them employed and get their remittances back to Sri Lanka to finance this particular gap. And also if we set up, as you know, Raj is here, the set up an education hub in Sri Lanka where we get students from India, students from China, students from all the Central European, Asian countries to Sri Lanka, and we get foreign exchange, then we can finance this gap. So this is where we stand today. We don't have foreign reserves, number one. Number two, we have a huge gap after the debt restructuring. Then the debt restructuring will generate the required amount of haircut. So we have to work harder in order to earn foreign exchange to meet this. So that is where we stand. Now, if we take the future, now I was just referring to the nominal sector. Now I am coming to the real sector. The real sector is that, you know, our exports have been only simple commodities. We have been exporting. Now this particular map is prepared by the Harvard University. This is called the export complexity map. The simple ones are all these green ones, yellow ones, the purple ones. The complex ones are very small component you can see in light blue. That's the complex one. So Sri Lanka had been exporting simple products like tea, rubber, coconut, garments, all types of goods. So about say 95% of what we export is simple products. And those simple products don't have a market in the future. So what is necessary for Sri Lanka to go for a complex product of export. And that should be a part of the new development plan to be implemented by new government under President Anupama Dissanayake. Then we have another problem. Because the world has already moved into the fourth industrial revolution. Sri Lanka is still in the second industrial revolution because all our machinery in factories are driven by electric, not by electronics. So what is necessary is for Sri Lanka to move from the second industrial revolution to fourth industrial revolution, bypassing the third, which is called the leapfrogging. It's just like a monkey jump. You know, when a monkey jumps from one tree to another, it actually bypasses everything that is behind. So Sri Lanka has to do that. And that requires us to go for a quantum leap. A quantum leap, the economists have borrowed it from physicists. What is necessary is now, actually the philosophy behind this is now, whatever we have, it starts giving us certain good things at a diminishing rate. For example, when I did my O-level, it started giving me income. But after some time, I find that O-level cannot give me enough income. Then it starts falling down. Then I do A-level. A-level also, when I have done it, I find that, you know, it will start giving me enough certain amount of income at a diminishing rate. But when I reach the top level, it starts coming down. Then I have to do a university degree, then a postgraduate degree, then doctorate, then continuous learning. Likewise, these pieces of, you know, moving into a new production level is called a quantum leap. Now Sri Lanka has to do that, and all the countries now. For example, everybody is now worried about Japan. Japan had been a rising star in 1960s and 70s. But today you find Japan has been overtaken by China. Japanese economy is stagnating. Mainly because of that, they have not done the required quantum leap continuously. That's the reason. If a country is unable to make this quantum leap continuously, that country will remain a poor country forever, because after some time, whatever you have invested, it has started giving us certain amount of output, but at a decreasing rate. So therefore, we reach the top level, then we start coming down. Now Sri Lanka has to do this because we are the second industrial revolution. There's a fourth industrial revolution and the fifth industrial revolution, and what happens is, unless we move up through this quantum leap, Sri Lanka has a problem. So this is the most important element in the new plan which the government has to prepare. And fortunately for us, those foreign experts, the scientists and engineers who came to prepare a plan for Anurakumar Dissanayake, they have titled it Quantum Leap. Therefore, we have some expectation that the new government will start a quantum leap for all of them. Then, issue is the deflation now. So already I have spoken about the prices falling down. Falling down prices is also not good. I mean, when the egg prices fell from say 50 rupees to say 10 rupees, we are very happy as consumers. But if the productivity of the poultry farmers has not increased, reducing their average cost, in the next cycle of egg production, the poultry farmers will get bankrupt. And we have eggs today, but we don't have eggs tomorrow. So this deflation is also something which the central bank doesn't like. Both inflation and deflation are horrible things for central bank. Central bankers don't like. We had the inflation at 70%, our central bank had brought it down to 0 and now it is a negative region. Negative region is not what the Central Bank of Sri Lanka should do, because in the new Central Bank Act, the Central Bank is now targeting the inflation level. That target is agreed with the government. When the Act was enacted in September 2024, the Central Bank signed an MOU with Finance Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe that the inflation rate to be maintained by the central bank in the future is 5%. But this 5% is a very strict number, therefore there is a leeway. You can go above 5% by 2% or you can go below 5% by 2%. So that's a plus or minus 2%. So the inflation rate in Sri Lanka in terms of the agreement which central bank has signed with the government should be between 3% and 7%. Now it is negative 1.7%, and if it is continued in the next quarter also, in the first quarter of 2025 also, central bank has to go to parliament and explain why central bank has underperformed with respect to inflation. That's a big problem. Then we have two issues. One is that the IMF programs, the neoliberal programs, normally they favor capital owners and they punish the labor owners. Because when we have these various benchmarks given by the IMF program, one is called the primary account balance. Now we are very happy about the primary account balance, but what has happened is we have taken the interest payments out from the government expenditure, then we calculate the balance of the government. So interest payment is something that we pay to the capital owners. But the labor owners, the payment of salaries to government employees and all that, they have to be cut down. So what happens is that the type of economic policies that being introduced by the IMF type reform is that they favor the capital owners and they punish the labor owners, and as a result we have a K type of economic growth where the rich people will become richer, poor people will become poorer, and this has been the trend in Sri Lanka ever since we became independent in 1948. The top 20% of income earners, they are getting about 50% of total income. The lowest 20% of income earners are getting only 5% of the total income. The balance 45% is earned by the middle class. So what should be done is that we have to narrow this gap, and if you want to have prosperity for all of us, we must have a together all, the policy of together all economic prosperity, so that we are growing up, the poor people, the rich people are growing up at the same rate. So the human capital, why there's a big problem for Sri Lankan professionals leaving Sri Lankan shores for abroad, greener pastures abroad. People are critical of them. They say that you are not patriots, you are traitors to your economy. You can understand why. Because the labor owners are being punished. So if you remain in Sri Lanka and if you are a labor owner, you are not a capital owner, you have to get out. The problem is that, there's the flight of the professionals and the educated people from Sri Lanka. So that requires Sri Lanka to grow faster, to make it a rich country within a single generation. India is doing it through a new program called NITI, National Institute for Transforming India. They have come up with a new program. It is always beneficial and advantageous for Sri Lanka to jump onto the bandwagon of India and ride the Indian economic growth so that we will be benefiting out of that. And when it comes to help us, you can see this is the amount of foreign reserves held by end of August 2024. China had 3.2 trillion foreign reserves, India 700 billion, Sri Lanka has just only 4.4 billion. So who can help us? Both India and China are there. So that is why I am glad that Androkumar Dissanayake visited India. He has visited China now. At least we may be able to get some money from those two people. Now if you want to be connected to me, on every Monday there's an article in Daily Financial Times. Is that I have given here the link to that particular article, My View Economics Matters. You can read it, you can agree with me, you can disagree with me, challenge me, criticize me, do anything that you might wish. But please try to read and understand. That's the end. So I think there's some question and answer session. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much once again, Dr. Wijewardena. And the floor is now open for questions. Yes, we have a question from Rotarian Mohan. Can we have a mic over there, please?
I believe that your speech has been brilliant, but unfortunately I am more confused than what I was before when I gave about the economic situation. But what I could understand from what you said is we are definitely now leading to another Arabic. Right? I mean, whatever language you use, whatever analysis you did, and we have a government, we can't change that either. And we have now, as you said, there is a Transformation Act which has to be followed. So now how do we get out?
Well, China and India. Very easy. China and India.
What do we, citizens of Sri Lanka, have to do? I mean, forget, why are we all begging and borrowing from the neighbors? There is something that we can do for our own country. So what I am asking is, what is that?
Okay. Yeah, I think, we are all very old people, I think. I think we cannot be as productive as we had been in the past. And Sri Lanka is also aging. Our median age is now 34 years and it's going to 48 years by year 2050. So naturally, very old people. So what we can do is, as I have said, we have to move from the present level of simple production methodology to a complex production methodology. Number one. Number two, we cannot just think of producing a whole product and send to the rest of the world. Instead, we must join the global supply chain, which has been called the production sharing network by Sri Lankan economist Premchand Atukorala, so that we are producing a single small item and we are sending it to the rest of the world. So one important thing is that President Androkumar Dissanayake is planning to sign a new ETCA with India, Economic and technological cooperation agreement. What we can do is that if he can join the bandwagon, that's what I said, if he can join the bandwagon of India, which has the ability as well as technology to become a rich country within the next 25 years, we are also getting a benefit out of that. So, if we can join the Indian supply chain and produce goods which the Indian exporters want to produce and send to the rest of the world, we have a way out. The same thing has to be done with China also. So that's why I said both India and China are the rescuers of Sri Lanka from the present crisis.
Hi, thank you very much for that presentation. Like that other person mentioned, I'm also more confused than before, but it was very useful information we got. But I think the bit which we were missing from the conversation was there's definitely problems coming forward because the current deal, the IMF, is not sustainable. You mentioned that we have $2 billion of payments due this year. I don't know if you included the bilateral numbers of 420 billion plus also the past due interest, and I think I read somewhere the calculation is 2.8 billion which we owed, and we also have an Indian debt swap of 1 billion which might have been paid this year. That's 3.8 billion, and if we import the cars, we are down another $1 billion. So the situation is very, very serious even coming right now. And one thing which we don't talk about in forums like this is the nature of the unjust nature of the global economic order. There is no chance for countries of the global south, including Sri Lanka, to actually get out of this type of crisis if we keep on playing the same game where the rules are completely biased in Sri Lanka or the global south. We have a reserve currency of the US dollar, which is completely there to protect those the big powers. The multilateral institutions protect the global north more than the global south, and we shouldn't be talking about the same old items like export-led type of business. It's important to engage, but every country in this world can't be a net exporter. How can every country be a net exporter, right? So one of the things we don't talk enough is that the things we have control over, which is the land, the oceans, the labor, and the rupee, has to be put into use to benefit the people. And the things like the Central Bank Act, one of the key tools which the government has, we have no control over the dollar. The only tool they have is the rupee, right? And when we keep talking about central bank independence, you're giving up key tool for the government. So one of the things I would like to also hear from you is, given this global context, when we keep on playing that same game which is posed on us, it looks like very unlikely we'll ever be able to come out of this, unless we do something quite different. The question for you is, something like the Central Bank Act, should we really take control of that? The government should take control of that to overcome these issues which we are facing globally.
Okay, very good elaboration. I think I did refer to the emerging external sector development, because when we have a person like Trump in USA, the president, who is trying to now take over Canada, Greenland and Panama, and also is threatening that he is imposing tariff on Chinese product. He is actually destabilizing the entire normally orderly happening international trade. So Sri Lanka will be a victim, we don't know. But of course, that's why I said if we join with India, at least India has a big market and we will be able to sell whatever that we want to sell to Indian people. But of course, our problem is that our market is very small within Sri Lanka. Everything that we produce in Sri Lanka, we cannot consume them all. Good example is tea. We produce about 330 million kilograms of tea. but each Sri Lankan consumes only 1.5 kilograms of tea per annum. Even though we are a tea drinking nation, it's only 1.5 kilograms of tea. So the total population of 22 million can consume only 30 million kilograms. But we are producing 330. So what can we do with the rest? We have to sell it to somebody. So that is why international trade is important for Sri Lanka. And when it comes to international trade, today, the trade takes place not for whole products. Trade takes place for small product. One single item, and that item, if you can produce in billions, you can gain. I can give a good example. In 1989, the World Bank got this Ford Escort motor car and it disassembled the motor car. It had some 2,000 odd parts. Produced by 16 different countries. Finally, the Ford Escort car had been assembled in a factory in Sussex in England. Fortunately, there are two items that had been produced by our Katunayaka export process on some rubber bushes for the Ford car. So likewise, what is necessary for us is not to manufacture motor car in Sri Lanka. We can join the motor car, BYD or whatever the motor car manufacturers in China, if we can supply them with one single item. When BYD is manufacturing, say, 5 million units of motor cars per annum, we are also sending them 5 million units. This is how it is happening in the case of Apple, iPhone. iPhone is assembled in a factory in China, Foxconn factory. But there are 47 countries and 274 odd different factories which are supplying parts to iPhone. Unfortunately, Sri Lanka is not in that particular game. So my advice is that if you want to be a winner in this unfavorable global atmosphere with a person like Donald Trump as the president in USA, you have to be a smarter fellow, and that smartness comes from joining with India and China. So that is why I said it is very good that Antakumar Dissanayake chose to visit India and is visiting China now. But of course, I don't know whether his advisors have advised him to get a good, facility from those two countries. Second one thing about this is central bank independence. Central bank independence is necessary not for Governor Nandalal Veerasinghe or President Antakumar Dissanayake. It is necessary for people like us. It is for us. Because this Colombo Consumers Price Index, I said, we started computing in 1952. The value of the index was 100 in 1952. We abandoned that particular index in 2008 and we started calculating a new one. But there are technical ways of amalgamating those indexes and calculate the general series. I have done it. Now the price level which we had as 100 in 1952 was 30,000 end of December 2024. So in other words, 1 rupee, if you have got your pension as 1 rupee in 1952, its value today is less than a quarter of a cent. What is the reason? Reason is central bank's money printing power has been abused by all the successive governments. So who are the victims? I have been a victim. A good example is now when I retired from the central bank in 2009, my pension in US dollars was about $1,500 US per month. Today it is $400 US. So central bank independence is for us, for people like you. I mean, people might come and say, the government has lost control. Objective is that to take the president, take the finance minister out of central bank. And so that the money that we have in our pocket is safe. It is not subject to inflation. Now, if you compare now, I compared only January 2021 to December 2024 to calculate the inflation tax. But if you calculate the inflation tax from 1952 to end of December 2024, how much? I mean, the 1 rupee value has come down to a quarter, less than a quarter of 1 cent. So that is why the central bank independence was, ensured, and presently, fortunately for us, the central bank cannot print money and lend the government. So as a result, if Antakumar Dissanayake wants to have a very high lucrative financing plan, he has to now find money from somewhere else, either by taxation or some loans or grants from China and India. He has to do it something else. But of course, I agree with you. We are talking the same thing and we are working the same global economic order. But that economic order is going to continue for many more years, whether we like it or not.
Good evening, Doctor. Firstly, thank you for that presentation. I thought it was very educative, and I'm certainly leaving this meeting knowing more than when I walked in. So I'm just one of those guys. So I have two simple questions. The first was that map you put. I thought that was a risk was a severity grid you put, but that was the Harvard University's export map. You showed all the sorry.
Export of goods and services, both.
Export of goods and services, and you showed all the simple exports that Sri Lanka is tapping into, and even those blue boxes, which I don't know if you purposely kept them in small letters that we could read. Can you?
I'm very sorry because this. Actually, I was testing your eyesight.
Are you not doing a central bank or things that you don't want to?
What you can do is you can always look into Harvard Complexity Economics Index map, and they have given this map for all the countries in the world, both for imports of goods and services, export of goods and services, then export destinations, import sources. It's a very rich source of information. Just go to Harvard University Economic Complexity Index.
So for the moment, can you tell us what those blue boxes meant?
They were actually the complex ones are simply, in terms of their definition, the electronic products and also some of the IT services that we had been sending to the rest of the world.
Yes, second question, Doctor. So you showed us the growth chart for the K and the Y and how to get to the Y, but nobody knows how to get to the Y and how you get that calculated.
No, I think.
So is there a magic bullet that is there? Everybody is talking about problems, but nobody is saying we got to do ABC. So in your opinion, is there one or two things that if you were in charge, if you were the leader of this country, that you would do to bring that into the Y chart?
Well, one thing is that the income distribution has to be made fair. That you can do through taxation. All the rich people who are here, I said that 50% of the total income of Sri Lanka is being appropriated by 20% top income earners. So they have to pay higher taxes. So likewise, taxation is one way to minimize the gap between the rich and the poor. That's one thing. Second one is that when you have higher economic growth and when you allow the labor services to get more income out of the economic growth, naturally we have the right type of economic growth pattern.
But Doctor,
it's better for us to become a state of India. Then we automatically.
Well, of course, if I say anything here, I think I would have been charged by the government for violating the constitution of Sri Lanka. Because we cannot talk about being a part of India. No, of course, personally, there are certain plus points if we become a part of India. One is that they have this 700 billion foreign exchange reserves. Number two, the exchange rate is still stable around 85 Indian rupees per US dollar. The exports are rising. Huge middle class that consumes goods and services. and I think better economic planners than those you find in Sri Lanka. So when you take all those 5 factors, plus points, I think it will be better.
Thank you, Rob. Mike, can I just...
Yes, Gamini, go ahead.
Not a quick question, not more than a question. Actually, thank you very much for this whole story, but there is something that we have forgotten. We can think global, but act local. If you can get our people to be committed to what they would do, and also to deliver properly during the 8 hours of work they do, most of the problems can be solved. I'm not finished this. You see, I know people in factories who wouldn't want to work that extra 2 hours but want to go home to watch the 3 teledramas that they would miss otherwise. The 3 teledramas that they would miss. And they want to sacrifice that for earning a buck. Like I think it's Dushan, my friend, who asked that how to convert K to Y. Attitude. If you can put all these issues and put it into the attitude graph, you will see if you increase that. The people who are reluctant to work 8 hours here, they go to Dubai or someplace and put in 12 hours work. Right? And if they do that here, they will have the same family and would have been able to go to bed with their wife. That's the most, they deprive all these things to families. So I think, Doctor, you've got to, all these figures and things are good, that's lovely. But let's get down to the bottom. But that's where the answer is. Thank you.
Well, I fully agree with you. And when I listen to your pledge, Rotary pledge, you have given all the answers there. I mean, all the people who have pledged to the Rotary pledge just before the meeting, you have talked about governance, you have talked about the sympathy, you have talked about the empathy for other people and all those things. But a good sign today is that Anukumar Dissanayake has just launched this Clean Sri Lanka project, which would clean not only the physical environment of Sri Lanka, but also the heads and the minds and the brains of Sri Lankans too. Let us support it. Let us support it.
Okay, just one more point. So, it's after the Second World War, when Japan was crushed to dust, right, they worked 2,300 man-hours per year, per person. In Sri Lanka, our average man-hours are 1,760 or around about plus or minus maybe 2% or something. So nobody is talking about increasing the number of hours we work with all holidays and all that, that's another story. And increasing the productivity. So if we increase our productive hours, I think we can do some of what you are saying. But no one is talking about increasing our productivity like what Japan did and maybe some Korea and other countries did.
Well, I think after the Second World War, yes. I mean, today, the solution lies not in working longer or working harder. Solution lies working smarter. So let us, make our people smart people. Gamini was, very critical of people watching teledrama. I am an addict to teledramas. If I don't watch my favorite teledramas, I can't even sleep.
But you're past their stage. These kids are still 23 years old.
No, even when I am in the central bank. I will give a good story. I will give a good story so that you will not have any misgiving about these teledramas in the future. Okay? The Parakrubahu the Great, during whose period Sri Lanka had the golden era, he had a civil servant training institute. Public king's servants training institute. The subjects that were taught in the training institute were singing, dancing, composing, then foreign languages, then of course the many things that the public servants those days should know. Riding on horses, riding on elephants, archery and fencing. Why this singing, dancing, composing, literature? That because that is our final consumption product. We may be working now. Michael is working at Hades. He is working at Hades. But at the end of the day, he goes home and he listens to Landamali. Am I correct? Because this entertainment is our final consumption product. Don't try to restrict it. Don't try to say, those people who enjoy the entertainment are bad people. They are actually regenerating them so that the following day when they come to work after they have watched their favorite teledrama, my God, they are up in the sky. I was like that in the Central Bank. And here one of the BME students here, the guitarist, she played every time when we had the talent show. She came on the stage and we played the guitars and don't try to insult that little girl because had Parakrama the Great had been the king, definitely she would have been taken into the public servants, training school.
On that note, I think we can take one final question.
Thank you, Dr. Vijayvarna. Very interesting lecture as usual. Some nice stories as well as I've been used to from your earlier lectures that I've attended. I have a couple of questions for you. You speak about India as being a possible solution. How realistic do you feel that is, especially in the context of our present FDA that we have had for a number of years? I think they graduated into something else. But the problem is that Sri Lanka has benefited from the exports, but nothing like as large as what India has benefited from the exports that has been sending to Sri Lanka. One of the problems I understand is that although it looks very good on paper, when it actually when it comes to dealing with India, you're dealing with a large entity with a lot of different state structures. So while you might be entering, companies might think they're entering into one uniform market, when they go on a state level, they are met with all kinds of regulations which are very difficult to combat. So maybe a solution is to get Indian investment and bringing their technology. But my question to you is, how realistic is this piggy banking on India? Are there practical realities that you have to confront? The other question relates to the global economy. You have spoken about the fact about what Trump might do if he comes in, and we have problems with Alaska and trying to annex Canada and so forth, and especially a trade war. What do you see of BRICS? Do you see that as being some kind of solution in the long term to the US dominance in the global economy? And what do you think of BRICS, the impact it could have on the global economy? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And this Indian the free trade agreement with India has not been properly understood by many people. I have, in my last week's article in Daily Financial, I have analyzed this. Because when we entered this free trade agreement with India, there are goods that are coming to Sri Lanka and there are goods that are going from Sri Lanka. Some of the goods were taken out from the free trade agreement. In the case of Indian imports to Sri Lanka, 1,180 different goods were taken out. They are called negative list. But India is a very, friendly and merciful country to Sri Lanka. Therefore, from Sri Lanka, the negative list was some 480 odd goods. Now, when you look at the global numbers of trade with India, that has gone. That's true. But when you break it down into the goods in the negative list, the goods not in the negative list, of the goods that have come from India to Sri Lanka from year 2000 to 2014, 80% is in the negative list. So anyway, those goods would have been imported by Sri Lanka, whether there had been a trade agreement or not. Of the goods that have gone from Sri Lanka to India, 85% is within the trade agreement. So what it means is that trade with India is still profitable. I agree with you. I mean, the different states have different laws and they don't, like India's central government to dominate them. So therefore, when they go through the ports in Chennai, there are lots of, hassle for Sri Lankan exports. But of course, President Antakumar Dissanayake, we have to sort this out. Without that, we cannot move forward. We have to sort this out. Second one is about the BRICS and the BRICS currency. lots of people say that the BRICS currency will, overtake the mighty US dollar. It will never happen. Why? One reason is, why do you accept a dollar? That is because the United States government has agreed, if you go with that dollar to USA, you can buy $1 worth of goods and services from US economy. As a result, the US dollar is convertible into all the other currencies. Number one. Number two, there is no gold standard today. In the past, before 1931, the world had the gold standard where each currency is, can be converted into gold. Therefore, there's a value for each currency. But today we don't have. But we have informally, the total gold stock of the United States is about 8,000 metric tons. All the big countries taken together, China, India, South Africa is a main gold manufacturing country. All together it's about 2,000 metric tons. So who is going to believe in BRIC currency? When USA has 8,000 metric tons and though the BRIC countries have only 2,000, I don't think any sane person might, believe in a BRIC currency. That's number one. Number two, suppose for example Sri Lanka is joining the BRIC currency. For example, now we use Indian rupee for transaction. How do we earn Indian rupees? Either we have to export goods or services, or we have to borrow from India. So since we are running a trade deficit with India, we don't earn Indian rupees to make the payment. So what it means is we have to borrow from India to make the payment. But to Indian currency and the BRIC currencies, the problem is there is no global financial market today. I hope it will be developed in the future. But today any country which is accepting the BRIC currency, if it doesn't have a surplus with the BRIC countries, it has a big problem of, meeting the liquidity. But in the case of the US dollar, there is outside USA, we have the euro-dollar market, separate market. You can borrow dollars anywhere. You can borrow dollars from Sri Lanka, you can borrow dollars from Japan, Australia, even from China. Then because there's a developed euro-dollar market, as a result, any liquidity shortage of dollars, if for example Trump decides not to print any money, but that shortage can be met outside USA through the euro-dollar market. So, unless you settle those two issues, I don't think BRIC currency can take over anything.
Thank you very much. I think we are a little short of time. Maybe we can catch up over.
We'll have it while we are having dinner.
Yes. Can I please invite Past President Ashad Bahab from the Rotary Club of Colombo Reconnections for the vote of thanks.
Members of the table, so we have 6 clubs today. With us, one is Port City, Brand Colombo, Reconnections, Infinity and Uptown. And our guest speaker, Dr. W. Vijayawardena, and then Dr. Haryana. Good evening to everyone. And Dr. Your speech was wonderful, comprehensive and informative session on the current economy. Starting from kitchen, prices from the kitchen, and hope the current president AKD will be having sleepless nights. And along with it, we have today Dr. Haryana, who is the award winner of Port City on vocational services. Thank you so much for your time. And Rotarians and friends of Rotary, thank you so much for your wonderful time, and we had a wonderful session, and let us have a fellowship and dinner together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Past President Wahab. Before we wind up, ladies and gentlemen, we have a small token of appreciation for Dr. Wijewardena. Can I ask all the presidents to come forward in front of the head table to present that to Dr. Wijewardena? It's made in Kent, like all Rotary plaques. On that note, ladies and gentlemen, is there any other business, any other comments anyone would like to make before dinner? Right, then on behalf of all the presidents here, the meeting is terminated and the floor is open for fellowship and dinner.
I'm going to grab some dinner.
That's for you, so you can take it home.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is Hoppers Action Station outside and also drinks. There's open bar outside, so please join us, and there's food inside as well. Doctor. So I'm just putting your presentation in welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time.